Hello and welcome to More Than a Game, a podcast about the A-Leagues, Premier League, and more. My name is Tommie C, and joining me on the pod this week, we've got Colby, Jesse, and soon to be joining us once he's put the kids to bed is Damo as well. Colby, Jesse, how you doing this week?
Doing well, Tommie. Happy to be here. Happy to be back. Welcome back to our listeners. Hope you've joined us. Because I don't remember when the last time we did a pod was, and we've been saying on the podcast that it's going to be like every month, but it's really felt like it this time. So happy to be back.
Well, there's been a lot that's happened in the last month. And I mean, we're not going to sort of just revisit everything that's happened because, I mean, some stuff has already been sort of talked to death in a lot of different ways. But will be some things that have happened have had some more recent sort of news that have come out of them. So we'll be talking about some of those tonight, though. Jesse, how are you, mate? Got a fresh froth there, by the look of things?
Yeah, it's the first froth since the last froth, which was approximately 21 hours ago. And just been recovering ever since. So back on the horse, and no better way to get back on the horse than get on the pod after probably a 4-month or 5-month hiatus.
Yeah, Jesse, how good's going to your mates, partners, sisters, friends gig?
Listen, I can't actually even articulate and put into words how good it is. But no, it was a lot of fun, and we made the most of it. And it was good. Good night out.
It turned out to be a surprisingly good night.
Nice.
Alrighty, boys. Let's crack on straight into moment of the week, shall we? Colby, you want to kick us off, mate?
Just a short one, Tommie. Just the headline that Fozzie and Awamabil have made it into the finalists for the Australian and Young Australian of the Year. So I just think that's brilliant recognition for two footballing personalities, one current and one former footballer, and both representing the game really well. Which given the events of the past month, is just really heartening to see the game represented in a positive light by these people and the work they're doing adjacent to it.
Garang Kuol just seems to really put his best foot forward at every occasion, really, doesn't he? Just seems like a young man who's really got his head switched on and head screwed on correctly.
Awamabil too.
Sorry, I totally misheard you then. I just had one thing in my mind and just went down a different road with it.
You could be forgiven for having Garang on the mind because he's left our shores now.
He's a young man who followed his heart.
In sunny Scotland.
We
couldn't be happy for him.
But yes, like you say, very, very good news after a pretty sort of sad last month or so. Jesse, what about you, mate?
For me, I mean, there's been a lot, obviously, over the last month since the pod was last on. But I think one just in recent memory is Alexi McAllister, going into training as an Argentinian and showing all his mates and and the kids that were just waiting outside the training ground his World Cup medals. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, and it just shows that he's a good bloke as well. And that's saying a lot because obviously my team got towed up by Brighton last night, but you still have to show respect where it's due, and it's really cool to see that sort of thing. And a lot of the Argentinian players I see have had a really good welcome coming back to their Premier clubs and other clubs abroad. So yeah, there's a few collective moments there.
How's the trust to let the kids just sort of have a hold of it, right? Like it'd be his prized possession, like irreplaceable, right? And he's just like these bunch of kids just hold it in the driveway, basically.
Solbase had a hold, Tommie, so I'm pretty sure it's all bets are off.
Yeah,
touche. All right, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, and we've got now that he's put the kids to bed, we've got Damo as well. Welcome, Damo. Good to have you on the pod once again. You got an own goal? A moment of the week for us this week.
Yeah, look, you're on the topic of kids with World Cup medals. Not mine, unfortunately, not yet. Anyway,
not yet.
But I'll keep on that topic. I don't know if you guys saw, or you've probably seen Antoine Griezmann's most recent bright pink haircut. He's had a few funny ones, but someone asked him about his bright pink hair, and he said that, well, I was going to choose either blue or pink, and I've got three daughters at home, and we took it to a vote, and Pink won. So he's got pink hair and until it grows out. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's yeah, some nice family content there, really, for all the listeners. All right, for me this week, look, I've had Kuol, Garang Kuol on the brain earlier on in the pod, and I think it'd be remiss of me not to mention the great story that is Garang Kuol going off to the other side of the world. He signed for Newcastle, obviously, in the past week. Or so in the new year, that transfer has been made official. And then there was a bit of a rush as to who would actually sign him on loan for the remainder of this season. There was rumour that he was going to Reading, then some more rumours that he could have gone to Scotland and joined one of the clubs up there, which joining, I guess, the Australian group that seems to be building up there. And as it turns out, he's landed at Hearts, which I think is probably the best case scenario, really, other than, I don't know, maybe Celtic. But I mean, we saw how that worked for Arzani, so maybe Celtic wasn't the best landing place for him. But made his debut this week, I think within 24 hours. Soccer Twitter had a meltdown because he only had 20 minutes on the pitch.
And three touches.
Yeah, and which one of them was almost setting up a goal. So, I mean, if he had been playing in a better league, like with the likes of Jason Cummings up top, then he probably would have had an assist.
I love these stories, Tommie, of like players that go to new clubs and stuff like that, and then they like play within like, you know, what is it, an hour or your day or after getting off the plane. Like he wouldn't even know his teammates' names. It's like, you know, you're inviting your mate to futsal or whatever, and
you're a ringer.
You know, he's shaking your hand before kickoff, saying, "Oh, what was your name again?"
I can almost guarantee that. I can almost guarantee that Garang Kuol didn't understand the vast majority of his teammates from Edinburgh.
No.
If you said guarantee there, Damo, that's very impressive.
Oh, I thought I'd leave the puns to you, mate. I'm just the fact guy.
Man, I'm just tapping it in.
Up to Damo strikes again, mate. All right, boys. What about your own goals? Damo, you want to go first?
I don't really have much of an own goal.
Is that your own goal?
Week or so, which is probably my own goal, but I'll go. I watched some football last night. There's probably many own goals I take from Jesse and Colby. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But my own goal was sort of the narrative around the Ten Hag versus Guardiola bald fraud matchup and everything that came of it and how quickly it all changed. And the Manchester Derby was a great game, but the offside that wasn't an offside, that should have been an offside, that is an offside but wasn't an offside is sort of my own goal. I don't know what you guys think, but in my opinion, I'm not a referee of the game. I don't referee in the Premier League, but for me, that's offside every single day of the week.
Yeah,
agreed.
Damo, it's interesting you bring this up because we've tried to sort of steer clear of just sort of discussing refereeing decisions, individual refereeing decisions, because more often than not, we kind of we all agree that it was either the right call or it was the wrong call. But with this one seemed like one where we were like, social media seemed very split about it. And it all depended sort of which team you supported in some cases. But I don't know, like at first I remember watching it thinking, oh, that's got to be offside. And then, yeah, it was given. And I think, you were blowing up in the group chat, Damo, saying there's no way that's yeah, exactly. There's no way that's a goal. And the more I watch it, the more I think that it shouldn't have been allowed. So yeah, look, not ideal, suboptimal, but.
Well, I just love the call of look, I'm not a professional referee, but it's I really don't mind it because I'm not a chef, but I can tell you when I've had a good bowl of pasta, and that for me is a goal, boys. Make of that what you will.
I think, not only was it that a great analogy, Colby, but not only was the offside, I think, a terrible call in itself, but it completely changed the game. And I'm sure we might talk about that game a little bit later, but it really changed the whole momentum of the game, which put everything in Manchester United's favour. So
I guess the thing for me that I
it
don't
turns out to
understand
be an
is,
enormous decision.
well, I don't understand why why the referee couldn't go to the monitor in that situation. Like, there seemed to be a big rush to make a decision when he walked over to the touchline assistant. So it was like, well, why don't you just go and have a look at the monitor and take a second look? I mean, the referee actually never got a second chance to have a look at it. It was all put to VAR, and VAR made the decision, which I thought was interesting, because in many other areas of the pitch, VAR recommends the ref to have a second go and they make the final call. So that for me was one of the unresolved aspects to it. But I completely agree. I don't think it should have been a goal. So,
well, almost all of them get reviewed now, don't they? All of the goals, I think. I mean, it's hard because I think we're still all a little bit stuck in World Cup mode where everything gets reviewed constantly.
They're all reviewed by the VAR, who is the nominated referee, sort of in the, I don't know what you would call it, the arc or the sky box or whatever they call it in any other sport.
The
bunker. Yeah, but like Jesse said, particularly in the Premier League, it seems they avoid at all costs the on-field referee running over to have a look at the monitor. It happens in the A-League. It happens in other leagues around the world. I think they use that more effectively, but the World Cup, we saw it. But the Premier League seemed to have this directive for referees to leave the video review to the VAR, and the on-field referee just have no involvement in sort of that review process.
Yeah, I think like the purpose of sort of running over to the sideline screen, that just seems to add a whole bunch of extra time, and didn't necessarily add to the integrity of the process either. It just seemed to be like it took away more than it added. So I think if it needs to be sort of reviewed, I think the person upstairs needs to just say, "Yep, nah, it's no good," or "Yep, it's good," and then let the referee actually sort of do the decision, or the hand signal or whistle blow, whatever you want to call it.
Enough refereeing own goals for this week. Who's own goals next?
Fair. Jesse, you want to go up next, mate?
I mean, I haven't been on since all the drama and the on-field riots and people getting, their faces put all over the Herald Sun. And there's a lot of stuff that's happened since my last pod. So I think some of the behavior off the pitch and then ultimately on the pitch, which should have been off the pitch, it has been an ongoing own goal for me, just weeks after the World Cup highs. And, I've been living those sort of highs vicariously through Socceroos fans, because obviously the All Whites weren't near the World Cup, but I was enjoying the Socceroos story and just seeing how quickly everyone got the air popped out of the balloon within a few days of the tournament finishing. Well, in some ways, I don't even know if the tournament had finished when the A-League resumed.
No.
But it was just a real shame to see that happen. And I know that a lot of people probably listening and people will be wanting to still talk about that, because midweek you guys were sharing information about supporter groups meeting with the board and things like that. So it's just a bit of a shame that happened. And I guess that I just wanted to acknowledge that, because for me, it was, the Knicks is still very much part of the competition, but it definitely felt Australian specific in many ways. And it's just a real shame that it happened.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like amongst your sort of non-football supporting friends or friends and colleagues and who aren't like at least or who are just casual football fans and don't really know a lot about the game, I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me and they're like, "So what's happening in the A-League? What's all this stuff about?" And the people that I'd ordinarily sort of vigorously defend the A-League and football in Australia and Australian football in culture too. And I just had nothing but a big sigh and, just having to explain it and like just basically to say, look, we're not normally like this, but I can't excuse that. Here it is. And it's like, how, yeah. And we talked about all this at the time, but not on the pod, but, everyone had the conversation of like, well, yeah, how do you do it? How do you keep doing it? And yeah, even this morning, I was literally chatting with a mate about it this morning who asked me about it unprompted and was like, oh, hey, what about all of that stuff that was going on? I'm like, yeah, about that.
Yeah, you're right. Like it was really indefensible, sort of what happened, and yeah, like there's the boycott that I work with. He doesn't follow the A-League, but he follows the Premier League. He's a British fellow, and yeah, he just sort of, even though he's like a football guy, even he was still like sort of throwing out some of the like the hooligan jibes and stuff like that. And you're thinking, mate, you're a palm, like you're a football guy. Like even you're giving me shit about this, and it was
Like those guys were copying you.
yeah, exactly. It was look, it was a strange dynamic, and I guess whilst a lot of people had, I guess, some really strong reactions to it, if they weren't involved. I mean, some people were really embarrassed. Some people obviously having to defend it. Some people sort of having to defend the indefensible. But I think that the ongoing sort of result of that. So, for example, you've got active fan groups that are now kind of getting the stick from security that they were kind of getting sort of somewhere between 3 and 5 years ago, and drums getting confiscated and signs getting confiscated. So we're back to that, and I think it's almost as if like the World Cup never happened, and that sort of intense feelings that we all had for football now has just been really blunted and dulled, and like we all love the A-League, right? But there's something missing from the A-League right now as opposed to pre the World Cup. It's a strange feeling because like the even this afternoon, like when the Wanderers played, and the Wanderers are going pretty well on the pitch this year. I mean, granted, it was a hot day, but like it looked pretty grim, the actual numbers of fans that attended there. And you think, well, no one's going to successful teams now, let alone teams that are struggling. So,
and we were all at the Sydney Derby before the World Cup, right? And just saying like, how good is it? And like, look at the crowds that were there and what an event it was. And, you know, the feeling of optimism that we all had, like being there for that. It was one of the best games of A-League that I reckon I've been to in recent memory. And then, yeah, to contrast it with the Wanderers, who are going well this season, and they're playing Melbourne City, who are the team to beat, really. So
I think the interesting thing to see in the A-League will be the next Sydney Derby, to see how that actually rates and whether people want to turn up for it or not, and also how much freedom, I guess, active groups are actually given, because I'm not expecting that they'll be given a hell of a lot. I anticipate it'll be a pretty flat affair, and sort of all of the oxygen out of all that the active groups will be sort of taken away, and it'll be pretty sort of dour affair. But we all know that the Melbourne Derby is going to be a bit flat for a while, needless to say. All right, good own goal though, Jesse. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Colby, what about you, mate?
Well, yeah, I mean, just coming out of that, Tommie, like, I don't know whether you guys saw, I think it was a couple of days ago, all of the active groups apparently met with the APL and like had a big chinwag with them. And then they put out a statement a couple of days ago, basically just pretty much saying that, yeah, guys, we're going to back down now of all these protests to do with the Destination New South Wales grand final decision. They're like, we're not going to protest anymore because the APL have promised us that they'll come and talk to us next time. So we're all cool. Which is basically what I read. That was, I mean, tell me if I'm reading that wrong, but reading between the lines, that's pretty much what the statement said to me. And it was pretty pissed.
Pretty much, yeah. And look, I don't think I saw any. I think there were two sort of responses to that statement. One was that's weak as Pierce, and the other one was that well, like, what could they do from this point after the Melbourne Derby? There was no way that was ever going to get overturned, because even if the APL wanted to overturn it,
the APL would be giving in to
exactly. They
people,
would.
Yeah.
The look would be terrible. Even worse than what it already was. So, it was.
I just think, aside from that, Tommie, like aside from the result and the APL were pretty hamstrung, and the supporters, like they were never going to achieve anything. You're absolutely right, but I just think, aside from that own goal, it's also a pretty big own goal for supporter groups to be sort of seen to be getting in bed with the organising body. I think fan supporter groups, should be solely accountable to the fans. They shouldn't have any
each other as well. Getting in bed with each other, let alone together.
They should be fiercely independent.
I mean, there's a
Fiercely
few people getting into
independent.
debate with each other at this point, and I'm losing track.
It's like the Batchy, mate.
Will you take this rose, Colby?
Will you take this Lockie Rose NPL team?
Rose is going everywhere. Lockie Rose,
Yeah.
Liam Rose.
Yeah.
Look, and I guess the other notable thing, I guess, that's come out about this was Melbourne Victory obviously accepted the punishment that was handed down from Football Australia. They were given a suspended points deduction. They were given a financial fine, and amongst other things, they were all there was nothing in there about sort of what they needed to do with active support, other than sort of forming a bit of a task force with Police Victoria and a few other different organisations. But curiously, Melbourne Victory acknowledged that they were going to disband their active support group. So OSM, or Original Style Melbourne, they subsequently came out and said that, well, they're independent of the club and the club can't disband them, which was was an interesting take, because, I can kind of see both sides' perspective on this. Like, Melbourne Victory...
It's true, but read the room.
Exactly right. Like, OSM, like, what are they going to do? Just, like, make this so untenable that Melbourne Victory just doesn't have active support going forward? Like, is that what they would prefer? But, like, they don't want to sit down with the club and sort of fix this, or say, okay, we have to find some sort of middle ground. It's just, it blows my mind that this is the response to it. But also, in other ways, doesn't blow my mind. Like, it's completely expected that they would have this petulant attitude towards it all.
Why is anyone surprised?
Yeah. I guess I feel this may be a surprise, but I feel a little bit for all of those Melbourne Victory fans that go with, like, their family or have sort of been sitting in, like, on halfway or whatever, in, like, all of those different membership areas, and are now kind of, like, their experience is being blunted as well because of all of this as well. Like,
and a lot of those Victory fans, Tommie, like, they're not just rocking up and, like, sitting on halfway or whatever. Like, the Victory are one of the most well-supported clubs, as we know, in the league, and have been since its inception. And these there's no end of, like, posts I've seen on Twitter and social media of, like, people who have been members since day one, going to like just about every home game, that are just being punished by this. But it's hard, because there's someone needs to be punished for this, and how do you do it? And it's if there was an easy answer to it all, I think we'd have found it. But I think we can all agree that a bloody Original Recipe Melbourne have no one to blame but themselves when they went and got hot and spicy with it.
That's right. Bring back tender roast.
Alrighty, boys. Very quickly, my own goal. I'm just going to rattle off just a couple of funny things that I enjoyed or that I just haven't liked. First of all, I guess the worst part about the Melbourne Derby and what happened that night for me was that access or all access A-League has pretty much been cancelled ever since. We haven't seen the return of that. I think they were going to be doing a Matthew Leckie episode that night, and obviously it never got made, but I don't know what's happened with it since. It seems like it's just sort of fallen over. I don't know what's happening.
A bit like Leckie himself, just kind of falls over.
Oh, yeah, he got booked for diving tonight, yeah. I really loved Joao Felix getting sent off in his debut for Chelsea. That was just chef's kiss. And then finally, another classic sort of peak A-League moment was the lights turning off or being shut off at Macedonia Park in Perth last night. That was just another highlight in a long highlight reel of just peak A-League moments. All right, let's get into our A-League anti-power rankings. I think everyone's had an own goal, didn't they? Yep, we've done that. We'll kick on into our A-League anti-power rankings. So for those that haven't caught this over this year, with us only doing monthly podcasts, we have decided to do a power rankings, and that's a way of, rather than us doing a month's worth of matches to catch up on, we'll look at sort of a combination of form and where people are sitting in the table, recent performances, and other things that might be going on around the club, and we come up with a bit of a power rankings and rank all of the teams. So this week, there has been plenty of movement in our A-League anti-power rankings. At the top, I don't think there's any surprises there really that Melbourne City sit top. J-Mac, 10 consecutive or 10 consecutive games.
Asterisks on that.
Yeah. What, just because he didn't score in the first 20 minutes of an abandoned match? Come on.
Just because I stopped captaining him in fantasy, he's decided to stop scoring.
So J-Mac's consecutive 10 games scoring, which is actually broken now. Didn't score today against the Wanderers, so 10 games is now the record. J-Mac's also on course to break the all-time A-League goal scoring record this year. But having said that, though, Paddy Kisnorbo has also left as well, which obviously he's been an integral part of Melbourne City over the last couple of seasons in the wake of Montbear leaving, and has really taken Melbourne City to another level. So he's a big loss for Melbourne City, but I guess we'll have to see whether or not how much of an influence he has not being there. Next, we got Central Coast. I've bumped them up a couple places this month. They're rolling along really well. Obviously, Kuol has left, but Monty is doing a fantastic job at Central Coast. In terms of their form at the moment, I think they've won their last 3. They've won 4 of their last 5. They're just they look like the second best team in the league. Jumping down into 3rd, and this is probably one of the biggest surprises, I think. And I'm not sure if you guys are going to agree with me or not here, but this is a classic sort of power rankings positioning here, because I put Brisbane Roar in 3rd place, and whilst they were 6th last month, and on the table they're 7th. And some people might say that they lost their last 2 games, and then they shouldn't be that high then. But they are doing very well. I think for 7th place with this squad, I think they are massively overachieving. And I think up until Wellington won this week, I think the Raw were 6th or maybe even 5th. So I think that's also influenced me a little bit. But I think Charlie Austin has left, and I think that makes them better now that he's left. And also you had Amiento, his breakthrough over the last couple of weeks has been a real sort of shot in the arm for the club, and that's been a real positive for the Raw. So look, they are very high, but then I think you look at some of the other clubs that are coming up in this next band, and look, feel free to anyone jump out and say who should be above Brisbane on this list.
Perth Glory, Tommie. What about them? 2 wins, 2 draws, and a loss. I know we're not counting this round, but they drew with Sydney, which I guess these days isn't that great an achievement. But they've revitalised, Tommie, under the partial lighting of Macedonia Park.
Look, I think that's a pretty decent shout. I mean, I've got Perth down in 9th place, which had them up 1 place from 10th from last month. And in hindsight, I think you make a pretty compelling case, because Perth, like Brisbane, I thought they were going to be last and second last. Wasn't sure what order, but that's how I thought they were going to finish. I thought there was going to be a lot of daylight between them and whoever was in 10th spot, but they're both massively overachieving, I think. And so, yeah, I think Perth you could probably put above the Jets, maybe even above Adelaide, maybe at a bit of a stretch. But
Jets I'd have near rock bottom, Tommie. I think what are they, 4 losses and a win? They're just languishing. I mean, they got a point against the Woo today, which I think we're not counting for the purposes of these rankings, but doesn't fill me with confidence.
Yeah, fair enough. So I put Brisbane in 3rd. I put the Wanderers in 4th. They dropped down 2 places after quite an inconsistent last couple of weeks since the World Cup. They beat Macarthur 4-0, but then they went to Perth and lost. So, that's hurt them quite a bit amongst some other pretty inconsistent results. And after going up 1-0 against City today at home, obviously they weren't able to hold on to the win there. And so I think 4th is probably about right for the Wanderers. Whether or not Brisbane should be ahead of them or not, I'm not sure. You'll have to let us know, listeners, if you think you disagree. In 5th place, we've got Macarthur. I think they're just doing all right. don't think that's particularly high or low for them. You've got Craig Noon and Davila. They're both coming back from injuries, and I think I'm not sure if either of you or any of you disagree with MacArthur being in 5th spot, but that's where I put them.
Tommie, I just wanted to ask you about Noon.
Mhm.
I'm glad you've reminded me that he's coming back from injury, because I'm thinking, what's he got to do to get more than 3 minutes on the pitch?
Well,
What's he got to do to get into my fantasy team?
Oh, I mean, a
dropping
lot,
price by
Damo.
about 200,000.
So only the best for your fantasy team, Damo. You're on absolute fire this week.
You have to sell Goodwin for him. That's not going to happen.
Yeah,
You could buy like 4 Noons with 1 Goodwin sale. Or you could buy 8 Leo Lacroix.
In 6th spot, I've put the Knicks. They're doing all right, but
Doing
look,
okay. I mean, come on. I mean, geez, that's a bit harsh there, Tommie. I mean, just doing okay. I mean, that's
Ollie Sale's been like player of the tournament in the past 2 games.
Yeah.
I mean,
Can't
how wet does Ollie Sale need to be before he comes home?
And how wet does Zavada's hair have to be
Oh yeah,
for him to keep scoring goals? He's got the slick back to say.
If it was player
very moist.
Enough oil in his hair that the US might invade.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Oh yikes! So look, it sounds I'm picking up a little bit of a groundswell that people think that maybe Wellington should be above maybe MacArthur, but yeah, Wellington doing. Yeah. Agree to disagree there. But Wellington doing traveling pretty well. Three wins in their last 5 games, only 1 loss, also a draw in there as well.
I mean, we're happy to be, at least in 6th above match fixing in 7th.
Yeah, look, they're doing well, Wellington.
Yeah.
Yikes. In 7th, I've put Adelaide, and they're the second or equal greatest droppers or dropped down in places this month. They dropped 4 places. One other team also dropped 4 places as well. Adelaide have been pretty awful since they've come back from the World Cup break. Goodwin, I think his first game back, he I think he scored in that, and I think he scored that great free kick from memory. I think it was against Wellington. I can't remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. But since then, Adelaide have put out a couple of pretty shocking performances that just have been really unlike them so far this season, and also under Carl Viet as well. So they dropped down a couple of places. Then we get into the Jets in 8th. They're up 1 spot, which I think, given the question that I'm about to throw to you all at the end of this section, probably might raise some eyebrows. But look, I think they only go up 1 spot because Sydney will drop down a couple of spaces as well. So, yeah, it's not so much that they've been good. It's more that just other teams have been worse. Perth, they also go up 1 spot. And I think we've already made our case that they probably should be higher than 9th. One thing we haven't mentioned so far is that Adam Taggart, he's signed for Perth as well. I think that's a great get because they haven't looked particularly convincing up top. But having said that, though, they had one of their key players, who's the real fleet-footed number 10, who I think plays on the right.
Oh, you mean David Williams?
That's also a great signing too,
Khalifi.
David Williams and Taggart.
I mean, rumor has it that the ball was still going through the stadium and out the other side after that late header.
Yikes. But so Khalifi, he's been injured. Not sure how long he's going to be out for, but it doesn't look particularly promising for him. He's looked really good for the Glory so far this season, and I think he's a big loss for them. So keep an eye out, I guess, for how the Glory go in the next couple of weeks.
Tommie, my boy Keegan Jelicic has just been carrying them. Tommie, that's who we're really missing here. I'm surprised we haven't mentioned him already.
Yeah, I was about to say you were gassing up Brisbane essentially having an NPL team, and you've got them up in
why did we get Keegs?
We got Keegan Jelicic and Luka Vanovic up front for Perth Glory, who are, I mean, look, that's a formidable NPL Queensland lineup. But talking about the A-League, I'm not too sure.
Oh wow. Alrighty, so then in 10th spot, we've got the Woo. They also jump up a couple of spots, but not necessarily because they've been good. The Woo have, 2 draws, a 4-0 or 4-1 loss against City as well since the World Cup. So, yeah, just as they look like they're about to turn a corner, then Lacroix just turns out another absolute stinker. Either gets sent off or cops an own goal or 2 own goals.
Hey, but they've got a documentary, Tommie. Okay, we can all just watch the documentary.
Hey, and they've
Remember
got,
the good times.
Then down 11th spot, we've got Sydney. They're the equal biggest losers this time around on the power rankings. They dropped 4 spaces. Just something weird and wrong is going on at Sydney at the moment. Can't quite put my finger on it. I know a lot of City fans are really unhappy with Corica and think that he should be getting the boot. Yeah, Sydney big losers this time around with them. I think they did have 1 win, but I mean, this is such a talented squad. Like they go on, Colby.
Sydney, we've been telling everybody what's wrong with Sydney for seasons now, haven't we? They've got a super unbalanced squad. Like there's talent in there, but it's either too raw or too aged to really be too effective, particularly for the kind of football that Corica wants to play with them. Like, yeah, there's talent there, but yeah, there's no balance.
Too undercooked or too overcooked. I mean,
rare or well done.
There's salmonella everywhere you look.
There's a lot of cooking analogies in this pod today. Must be
you guys
dinner time.
Yeah, have you guys eaten or?
Nah.
I cooked some tacos up beforehand, so I'm good to go. No cooking puns out of me tonight. All right, and finally, I mean, it'd be pretty hard to put anyone other than Melbourne Victory in last place. They're playing pretty awful football. They don't look like scoring goals. They're big money. Marquee recruit Nani has done his ACL and won't play for the rest of the season. Their fans are the both active ends of the stadium are banned. Just pretty much anything that can go wrong seems to be going wrong at Melbourne Victory at the moment. Even on the pitch, you would have thought that they would have been able to sort of look at the situation and say, okay, we're going to really respond on the pitch and show the fans that like they're still a football team to be proud of. And they almost
now that's a talented squad, Tommie. Like this is a talented squad underperforming. Like front to back, they're very, very decent. Like, yeah, they've had some injury problems, but like you can't say that's not a squad that should be pushing and challenging for the title. Even, I mean, we all said it at the start of the season. Like, go back and check the tapes, which I'm sure we will do at the end of the season. But this is a solid squad. Popper's a solid manager. Something like this is just, I mean, a real head scratcher.
Yeah, and I mean, even with what happened at the Derby, like that, I don't think that accounts for everything that's happened. And I mean,
they were tanking before this.
Yeah, exactly right. So. It's pretty grim. Boys, I do want to throw out one question before we move on and talk a bit of Premier League, and that is, so there's a bunch of really underperforming managers at the moment in the A-League. You've got Corica, Popovic, Pappas, and Aloisi, and it's maybe you could throw in Viet in there. Maybe it's too soon to be sort of throwing Viet into the conversation, but at least those 4 that I mentioned up top, I don't think all of those 4 will end up making it to the end of the season. But I reckon maybe 2 of them might end up getting sacked sort of mid-season. Who do you think is going to be the first to go? Because, I mean, it feels like all 4 of those are just sort of any moment they could get sacked.
Got to be Corica, hasn't it? I think Aloisi's still got the championship glow. Pappas, I think Newcastle are pretty invested in him. I mean, financially and emotionally, and he's a great manager. I think I mean, Newey fans, correct me if I'm wrong, but they seem pretty happy with the kind of football that he's playing. And who was the other one?
Popper.
I
mean, Popper's relatively new in terms of his job, and look, he's probably given a bit of leeway because of everything that has gone on at Melbourne Victory externally, that they said, you know what, there's a little bit of leeway there. If everything was going well and performances were this poor, you would imagine he'd be first to go. But everything is going well at Sydney FC and their performances are just as bad, if not worse. So surely it's got to be Corica.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
His tendency has run its course. He's been there, what, 4 years, 5 years now?
but from memory,
Something
didn't
like
they
that?
renew his contract at the end of last year? I think he's on a new contract, isn't he?
Semi-recent, yeah.
Which
Yeah,
I think.
what are contracts? What are long-term contracts in football?
Meaningless,
Mutual
not worth the
agreement,
paper
we'll
they're written
strike
on.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess I feel like it's not so much the on-field performances that's actually keeping a lot of these guys in their job. It's other matters or other factors. So, for example,
Yep.
Melbourne Victory, they probably can't afford to pay out Popovic's contract after their financials got released. I think recently they're $5 million in the red. They got a $500,000 fine as well. So they probably can't afford to pay out Popovic and get another guy in to replace him and replace Nani as a marquee as well. So that's a lot of money, like that we're talking about those three things. Aloisi, it seems like he's probably the one that's sort of holding on with the loosest grip, I would say, because it seems to be only the fact that sort of he won the title last year that's sort of keeping him there. But was that his first or second year there? That was only his first year there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like it's not like he's been at the club for a long time. It's not like he has sort of like a super strong sort of connection to the club. But I mean, they're also a club that I don't think is doing super well financially as well. So,
I mean, who is?
Yeah, show me an
true.
A-League club that's doing well.
Well, and
Melbourne
true.
City.
Yeah, not out of their own doing.
Yeah. And Papas, I guess, like I think Newcastle's still owned by the APL as well. So, well, it's all a bit grim as well. So,
Well, I mean, they got a fair bit of cash, bit of liquid to pay him out. So
it just doesn't seem like anyone's actually in a position to sack anyone, even though they probably all want to sack all of those four managers. So it's a really, really bizarre situation. All right, boys, let's talk some Premier League, though. So, talking Premier League power rankings now. Last night, obviously, we had the Manchester Derby, second only to the Melbourne Derby in global significance. But two obviously massive clubs, both of them in good form at the moment as well. But it's neither of those two teams that we're talking about on the top of MTAG's Any Power rankings this week. Arsenal still sit top. I've still got them in first despite Gabi Jesus' injury. Even with him out, Arsenal still seem to be able to do the business and have had a really good return back to the Prem after the World Cup ended. So Arsenal retained top spot. Manchester United, though, with Cristiano Ronaldo leaving, I've bumped them up to second place. And I had them there even before the Derby result last night as well. So, boys, I don't know if you think I've gone too soon on the United chat there. But should United be above City? Is that about right? Or
yeah, they should.
Look,
they won the last five, and
yeah.
City should arguably falling a bit more. They've lost the Derby. They bumped out of the EFL Cup to Southampton. They drew with Everton, and back in November there was that loss to Brentford as well. They've gone off the ball for me.
Yeah, and look, our power rankings are specifically for the last month of football, and I mean, Manchester United probably have been the most exciting team to watch. I think you could even argue that they could be above Arsenal in this sort of power ranking on the last months of football alone. Ooh. Arsenal have been scraping their way through games, and Manchester United have really been doing it in style. So, in my opinion, Manchester United have been the best team to watch in the Premier League over the last month since the World Cup's been finished.
So Arsenal have only dropped points against Newcastle so far since the return from the World Cup, and I mean Newcastle are a good team. They're on fourth place on the table, but they still sit 5 points clear of City in second place. They've got a game tonight in hand as well. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, look, interesting point, but. Yeah, so you guys, I've put City in third place, and I had them there before the Derby result last night. I was happy to keep them there after the Derby result because, I mean, they haven't been super convincing. But I still think that they're in a better position than Newcastle are. And I mean, arguably, it's sort of that next group of teams after that really could be the only ones that really sort of push City or Newcastle out of those third and fourth places. Is there anyone for you guys who you think could actually push City or Newcastle out of that third spot in the power rankings? There's a couple of really informed teams there, sort of in that fifth through to seventh spot in the power rankings.
Yeah, look, for me, if you look at the way teams are getting points and the way they're playing football, I think Tottenham are probably the only one in that probably top 10 that I would look at and go, yeah, they're a top 4 team right now. But that's just the last. If you take away their last 2 games where they were absolutely horrible, before that, Tottenham have been pretty consistently being able to get the job done. In a very Spursy way, of course. They're not going to win anything, but they'll scrape their way through to a top 4 somehow. But yeah, unfortunately for Colby and Jesse, Liverpool, who Tommie we've got here in 8th. The note here says that the title challenge is over. I think it's almost becoming a bit of a desperation battle for a top 4 challenge now, as more than a title challenge, and that's become the reality for Liverpool, which is now looking like a very difficult task to sort of achieve.
I'm surprised we're even in the top 10 here.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, and look, I guess that Liverpool are benefiting a little bit from me having done these before last night's results and performances. So maybe if I had done these either today or tomorrow, things might be a little bit different. But boys, we have missed out three big teams that might
big.
It's probably maybe debatable whether or not they're, but in terms of our power rankings, they're big teams.
It's full ham.
And there's a bright one as well. But look, Fulham, Brighton, and Brentford are absolutely flying at the moment.
And Hove Albion.
2 clubs. Come on, Tommie.
But so Brighton, Fulham, I've put them in 5th spot at the moment, and arguably, in hindsight, I kind of wish that I had to push them a little bit higher. I mean, they're probably, I think them and Brighton are really candidates for jumping above either City or Newcastle at the moment. And remember, this is power rankings. It's subjective rather than objective. But Fulham are just absolutely flying. I mean, even their most recent result that Fulham had, which was who was that against? I think it was Leeds.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, this was against Chelsea. This was Friday morning against Chelsea. And Fulham beat Chelsea even without Mitrovic. It was Carlos Vinicius that ended up getting one of the goals there. So it's a real squad performance that they're turning out. So Fulham, I think,
Willian with the goal as well against Chelsea was
didn't celebrate.
The narrative you needed to see.
That was kind of nice, I thought. But Fulham are surprisingly. Fulham are probably a pretty decent candidate to be even higher than what they are than 5th. Brighton as well, absolutely flying at the moment. Massive result last night for them against Liverpool. I probably should just sort of pass over to Colby and Jesse for you guys to provide some insight into how that went, or are you just not interested?
I think we had about 30-something% possession. I mean, that says everything you need to know.
The crowd were doing all A's and
yeah, we got passed into oblivion, and they're red hot, and we're obviously awful at the moment. But I just wanted to isolate those 3 teams that we were talking about. One thing they have in common is they've all been very brave. We just talked about the possession stats for Brighton, but all of them, whether they're playing counterattack or they're just refusing to sort of play for a draw, it's so refreshing, because we talked on the pod a few years ago about these teams that were coming up every year, like Burnley, and I know Burnley's different now, but back then
Huddersfield,
Burnley, and they had no interest in playing football, but just to play for a draw.
Norwich
and some of
still
these
haven't changed.
Yeah, but some of these teams that are there that we're talking about, I mean, I think the pleasing thing is that they're not shithousing their way to that position. They're playing football, and Brighton played better football last night than Liverpool did by a mile. So they're doing it in style, and that's why I think there's a lot more merit to these guys in the power rankings.
What about Welbeck's goal though? Come on. Whew.
Wowie.
Well, yeah, an interesting statistic which came off the back of the Brighton Liverpool game.
Going off to Damo.
And you were talking about possession stats, and we often see the big teams, right, have lots of possession, play the ball, lots of passes, short passes. Liverpool actually have the highest percentage of long balls in the Premier League this season. And long ball, I think, means over 45 meters or something. So essentially where they go straight over the midfield. I think Liverpool have something like 62 or 63% of attacks are long balls at the moment, which is a pretty telling statistic that either you don't have the personnel in midfield, or the personnel in midfield aren't trusted, or Jurgen Klopp's just hit a bit of a hurdle where he doesn't really know how to play with the players he's got at the moment.
It sounds like the real villain here, sort of Scooby-Doo style, is like Klopp's going to pull off the Klopp mask, and it's actually Sean Dyche. Disguise.
I knew it was you all along.
With it if it wasn't for Brighton.
Wasn't for those pesky promoted teams.
It wasn't for Welbeck.
So in seventh spot, we've got Brentford. They also have just been absolutely flying as well, just buzzing around. Being
Side note, how is Ivan Toney still playing football in the Premier League?
I have him in my draft.
Does he get banned?
I have him in my draft fantasy team, and I just keep playing him thinking, oh, well, if he doesn't play, he'll just get auto-subbed out. And he keeps scoring as well. I just don't know what's going on.
He's there against the odds.
It's a real gamble having him there.
Yes.
Oh,
I love it. But yeah, look, Brentford just absolutely flying. I don't think anyone would have expected they would have been going this well. They're just, I guess, hoping they can get the most out of Ivan Toney before sort of the inevitable suspension that's coming probably. Any day, surely.
They should cash out.
Yeah, they should.
Yikes.
The Premier League offers a 12th place cash out. Brentford, are you taking it?
In eighth spot, we've got Liverpool, but I mean, boys, it sounds like I've been very, very generous by putting Liverpool at eighth. Fair to say?
Yep. Yeah, they're tanking at the moment.
Okay. There's probably one team who I think probably are a little bit unlucky, I guess, they're not to be above Liverpool. It's not Spurs, who I put in ninth. Despite what Damo was saying before, I think Spurs have been awful so far since the World Cup. And I mean, Conte just wants more money, but I mean, we know that Levy's not going to give him more money, so it's just a bit weird and a bit awkward. They've been linked with Trossard from Brighton, who apparently has had a bust up with De Zerbi, which is weird because I mean Trossard's been one of Brighton's best players this season. So yeah, anyway. But yeah, not really sure sort of where to put Spurs because they've been pretty Spursy since the World Cup. I think they've only won one league game. They've lost one, drawn one, and just they're coming into North London Derby and don't look like beating Arsenal. At least in my
Tommie,
opinion.
I reckon you could have Forest sneaking into this top 10 somehow, whether Villa or Spurs drop out. They've won 3 of the last 5, drawn 1.
Yeah. So Aston Villa, I think they're the big one that probably should jump up above at least either Liverpool or Spurs. Aston Villa again got another win overnight. Actually, sorry, I think it was Saturday morning that they played against Leeds, I think, from memory. And so yeah, they are just Unai Emery is just working wonders there at Villa. But yeah, looking like Liverpool and Spurs should be dropping down, which takes us or rounds out that top 10.
Emery's doing a great job with the Lions, Tommie.
Yeah, I was really triggered by that. That what was it. So Optus Sport on like one of their pop ups said they were calling Villa the Lions, and I was like, I know they have a lion on their crest, but I don't think I've heard anyone ever referred to them as the Lions before. I mean, checked Wikipedia, and apparently their nickname is the Lions, but I mean, I'm still pretty skeptical.
Lions
Well,
of
the person
Scarlet.
at Optus Sport who called them the Lions just checked Wikipedia too. That's how
Yeah.
these things happen.
Exactly right.
Or edited it.
Yeah.
All right. That brings us down to the second half of our Premier League power rankings. So we've got the team that I think it was Colby just mentioned just now. Forest up into 11th. They're 5 places up. I think that makes them the biggest risers so far this month. Just from a team that we were discussing before about like Garang Kuol, who felt like a ring-in. You had a whole squad of ring-ins at the beginning of the season at Forest, and for them to be starting to sort of turn things around and looking far more like they deserve to be in the Premier League than what they did in those first couple of weeks. They're sitting very well at the moment and are beating teams that they would hope to be beating, and that's really all you can kind of do for when you're a newly promoted side. So they're up in 11th for me.
I'm pretty sure when we did the pod last time, we were all sitting around here laughing at each other that Steve Cooper managed to get a new contract. Looks like Forest are the ones laughing at us now.
Mm-hmm. And like they're 13th, so like it's not like they're flying. Like they're not up there with like Fulham and Brighton and Brentford, but they're
There's
very
only 5
clear
points
of relegation.
between 13th and Southampton, so it's
Exactly.
quite a tight table.
Very tight table at the moment. Which, like, if you look at the next team, who probably are a little bit lucky, I think, to be in this position, in 12th. I put Leeds in 12th. Damo, you might have a suggestion for, or maybe an argument for why they shouldn't be in 12th.
I think Damo would say they need to be higher. Is that right, Damo?
Yeah,
you love
look,
Leeds, Damo.
I've never got any comment on Leeds. You guys know that. I'll leave the Leeds comments to you guys. Look, now that Bielsa's gone, I don't really have much beef with Leeds.
Oh,
Not.
so does not have a beef with them, not. But yeah, look, Leeds not in great form. Lost to Villa on Saturday morning. Drew with Cardiff in the FA Cup. Drew with Leeds. Drew with Newcastle. Lost to City. And yeah, so like they've had a couple of draws. But otherwise, kind of just treading water a little bit in a bit of a strange sort of zone in the table at the moment. They're 14th. Haven't won a game in 5, but they're just sort
They've
of
won 2 of their last 15 games in the league.
Yeah, that's pretty grim.
I mean, it says a lot about this table, though, Tommie, that basically Wolves can never win and they can bypass Everton, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Leicester City, Crystal Palace, and Leeds, probably into 12th.
Yeah.
Like the second part of this table is just some appalling form.
Yeah.
Most exciting relegation battle in a long time, let's be honest.
Yeah. Like Liverpool will, Liverpool could like drop down to this mix because you've got Chelsea in there as well, who are in a similar form line at the moment. But geez, those teams in there are struggling. All of them.
And Crystal Palace, and like Crystal Palace had back-to-back games against it was against 2 newly promoted sides. I can't remember which 2 they were. I think it was Bournemouth and Fulham, and they didn't get a shot on target in either game. Which, if they had gone the third game without a shot on target, would have been like a new record or something like that. Which, like that's awful to not even get a shot on target in one match, let alone 2 in a row. Which I just can't imagine how grim that would be watching that as a fan or participating in that as a player. Just awful. Crystal Palace, by coincidence, I've got them in 13th, which feels very, 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 very fortunate for them. Like I was saying, 2 games consecutively without a shot on target. They're probably a bit lucky to be in 13th because the teams that are below them have just been awful to date, with maybe one exception. Leicester City were looking good before Christmas, but have just totally regressed back to sort of their early on in the season form. Just look like utter trash again. I think they're back to being rooted back to they're back in the relegation zone. Or sorry, no, they're 2 points clear of the relegation zone, but they've lost their last 4 games. Just everything looks really grim there. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do slip back into the relegation places in the next couple of weeks.
Brendan Rodgers is surely it's either him or Lampard who's the next manager to go, rather.
Let's
but
have
the
this
problem
discussion
is
now.
who is there?
Because I was going to discuss this at the end of the pod, because I think there's two other candidates for who could be sacked first, and that's Potter, Klopp, Moyes, Lampard, and Rodgers. They're the five that I think are very close to getting sacked. And even I can see Tommie Fitzgerald in the comments is saying as well that Jesse Marsh, he seems to be on borrowed time as well. I remember seeing some commentary about that over the weekend as well. So
Jesse Marsh.
Jesse Marsh.
Boys, we know that Klopp's already been replaced at Liverpool by Sean Dyche, but is there anyone else who you think should be replaced, or who it's basically inevitable that in the next couple of weeks they're going to be replaced? There's those five names that are rattled off before: Klopp, Potter, Moyes, Lampard.
Look, out of that list, Tommie, I think I'm ruling Klopp out of that purely out of I just don't think Liverpool can do that. No, unless it gets to Liverpool are 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th in the league. It's just not going to happen, right? That's how I see it anyway. But yeah, to add anyone else to that list, Vieira hasn't really done much recently. Conte could potentially be on that list because he's refusing to sign a new contract unless he's given what he's want. And knowing Spurs and Daniel Levy, they're not going to just let him run the course of his contract. They'll just say, go now. We'll get rid of you and we'll fix it now. So you can probably include him in that conversation just purely out of the fact of contract negotiations breaking down.
You didn't mention Nathan Jones, but he literally was on course to potentially get a really early sacking before his win against City in the Cup. So he's kind of redeemed himself in one game.
Well, he's probably been on the golf course with Ward-Prowse on course, and they're up to par now. And I'd love to. I want the Netflix documentary of Gareth Bale, Ward-Prowse, and Luke Bratton, where they just go golfing and have beers and talk shit.
Look, we're talking about Ward-Prowse's golf, but his celebrations from his goals this morning, I don't know if you saw them. So the first one was a full golf swing. The second
one was
just
a putt.
A cheeky putt.
Love that.
the free kick was just a putt home. Easy as you like.
Well, Pickford didn't move, so it looked pretty bloody easy.
Well, it's because he chipped it over the defender. The defender was rushing back from the wall back to the goal line. And I think it was Pickford just looked at the guy like, what are you doing? Are you going to stop that or what? That's what you're running there to do. And yeah, I mean, Pickford's Pickford, right? He's just a weird dude, so even at the best of times, and then does stuff like that. So anyway,
I think the thing with Lampard is that it feels like a bit of a lightning rod thing, where if they sack him, I don't think the fans are particularly in love with Lampard, but it's the fans hate the chair, the board, and so if the board sack the next manager, then it's just gonna it just feels like a can of worms waiting to open, where they'll just be like, well, why don't you guys leave? You're the one that screwed up our club. I mean, someone had a sign last night that was like, you've killed our club or something like that. So
get Moisey back.
Yeah, well, I mean, that could happen. That literally could happen. It could just be a swap between.
We're talking about managers getting sacked and who gets sacked, but for these Premier League clubs that are in the bottom half of the league, if they're sacking a manager, realistically, who is there to hire that's any better? You're looking at a pool of managers that are either championship managers or they're not high profile managers that these clubs would want to get themselves further up in the Premier League.
Big Ange.
There's just really not a market for managers at the moment, I don't think. Big Ange,
there was a rumor,
exactly.
There was a rumor that Ange was going to West Ham. I don't know where that came from, but
Ange has been rumored with every bottom half Premier League club that looks like they want to sack their manager, from Leicester to Everton to West Ham.
Ange should go to Leicester, I think. They're my pick, because they've been a little bit they've sort of become a bit stagnant, but they've got a great training ground and really good facilities on the back of their Premier League win. And if Rodgers leaves and someone comes along and they're willing to be a bit patient with that guy, I think Leicester City would be the right fit for him.
Well, and Leicester have clearly got the track record of going to Scotland to find a manager. I mean, they picked Brendan Rodgers from Celtic as well. So, but it also could make the fans feel a little bit nervous that, hey, the last guy we picked from Celtic wasn't good enough. Celtic isn't really the standard. Maybe Ange isn't the man. But Ange thrives off that kind of sentiment when he comes into a job. It's just only if he can come into a Premier League club and turn everything around like he's turned around everywhere else. It's the biggest ask in the world is to turn a bottom half Premier League club around into something better.
So yeah, there you have it. But down in 15th spot, we've got Chelsea. They hold their ground in 15th spot. They were 15th last month, and I thought that was going to be really harsh and they would rebound back with some good results, but they've just had a bunch more shocking results. They've had two losses and a draw, and things just remain grim at Chelsea. Really horrible situation there for them at the moment. Bournemouth got them in 16th. They've had 4 games since the World Cup, 4 losses, also in pretty average situation at the moment. But look, one of the biggest movers in the bottom half of our power rankings is Wolves. They've got 7 points from 4 games, absolutely shot up the table. And Julian Lopetegui seems to be getting a real tune out of a bunch of players there now. They're not significantly improved, but at least their results have been improved, which, I mean, ultimately, you don't need to be the best team.
They've had a great transfer market so far, haven't they, in January?
Yeah, Matheus Cunha, he's a pretty good pickup. He looked pretty lively last night. And, I mean, Wolves' problem has been for the last 2 years or 3 years is that no one other than Jimenez can score goals. So he looked pretty decent last night and looked like he could lead the line for them, maybe to replace Jimenez. But
we've been starved of that trance, heavy trance song that comes on every time Wolves scores a goal. If you feel like it, boys, make sure you go back and watch the highlights this morning. And when Pedence kicks it in, just wait for the track to kick in afterwards.
Oh, mate, I was not having a good time. I was not having a good time watching Wolves at 2 a.m. this morning. That was not fun. Did not enjoy that one.
Rough.
In 18th spot, we've got Everton. They got a point against City, but otherwise have just rolled out a bunch of really, really shocking performances. Lost to rock bottom Southampton overnight, which that's a sign that things are really grim at the moment. At
home as well. At home.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's between Lampard and West Ham's David Moyes as to who's going to be the next manager sacked. Moyes as well, I guess, seems to be sort of riding. He's sort of got the Aloisi halo a little bit at the moment. Obviously, had a great last couple of years with West Ham. Has got some great results, some memorable European nights as well. But yeah, all is not well at West Ham either. They're in 19th. I actually think Moyes might have been sacked recently, if not for the minority owner of the club, David Gold. He
One
died.
Of the Dildo brothers.
Yeah, exactly. Rest in peace. Sort of leave your dildos out. David Gold, he passed away about a week ago. It was just on the eve of the Leeds game from memory. And I thought that he might have got sacked if they didn't beat Leeds, but then, one of the owners passed away, and it seemed like maybe the decision-making process might have been sort of short-circuited a little bit, and maybe they weren't able to do maybe what they otherwise might have. Then in last spot, we got Southampton, Jesse's favourite team.
I was just going to say, Tommie with the Dildo brothers in a bit of trouble. Who's going to rubber stamp the paperwork from now on?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't peg you for a dildo humor enthusiast.
Oh wow. Well, on that note,
Southampton.
I think I'll just finish there.
Well, Southampton, Tommie, have been, as any listener of the MTAG pod over the years knows, that I've been waiting for these guys to go down the drain. And this is quite a historic moment because aside from their win last night and the win before that in the Cup, this could be potentially the closest time I've seen them go down the drain. That they are literally on the edge of the drain and about to get washed down, yet they're hanging on as they always do.
They're that little piece of hair that just won't go down, won't go away.
the beard trimmer, the beard trimmings are holding them up at the moment. So
Southampton in the next couple of games, they play Aston Villa next week. Then midweek, the following week, they play Newcastle in the League Cup semi-final, which I didn't realize that they were in the League Cup semi-final. So yeah, look, a couple of extra games, which they probably aren't ideal. But then they've got a really interesting run. They play Brentford, Wolves, Chelsea, Leeds, and Leicester, which they're all very winnable games. And I mean, we could see Southampton sort of take a big step away from the drain, which I know Jesse, you'd be very excited about. Southampton getting a couple of solid results and stepping away from the relegation zone.
Yeah, I love that for me.
Oh, gift that keeps on giving. All right, boys. We do have one final thing before we wrap up the pod, and that's to announce an FPL prize. So we do have a prize to give away for December. December was a shorter month. There was only 2 game weeks, but we still got a prize to give away. The winner of this month's prize, he scored 171 points, which is not a huge total, but for only 2 game weeks, that's pretty solid.
Actually, that's not that good.
he was just 3 points ahead of second place. So it was very, very close. But Mark Skelton, he takes out this month's prize. An interesting fact about Mark Skelton, I actually don't think he's a listener of the pod. In fact, I don't think he even follows us on social media. He is the friend of someone who does, though. So if you're Mark Skelton's mate, make sure you let him know that he's won a prize. So we'll get in touch with, I think it's Toppie. Toppie is it's Mark Skelton's mate. So yeah,
Mark Skelton's mate should just get Mark Skelton to listen to the pod.
I mean, plot twist: Mark Skelton was the gig we Tommie.
Was it? Look, overall,
congratulations, well done for that.
Yeah, well done, Mark. Overall, Mike Woods Kyogo Betweens remains the overall leader, a solid 60 points clear of second place, which that's quite a gap, and it's going to take some catching up to catch Mike Wood. But what everyone really wants to know about, that's how the 4 of us are going. Damo is 4th overall in the MTAG League. He's absolutely flying. I'm 26th. Colby is 46th. Mikey Mifsud, he's 51st. George is 61st. Damo is Damo, despite being 4th, he's 71 points behind Mike Wood. So pretty big gap there, but obviously anything can happen, and there's still a lot of football to be played over the remainder of the season. While we're on the topic of FPL, though, I did want to have a very brief shout out for how we're going in A-League fantasy, because I mean, I wouldn't otherwise mention this, but we've got a few people that are absolutely flying. Colby, he's in 162nd overall. That's out of, I think there's about 13,500 people that are playing A-League fantasy. So yeah, Colby is absolutely destroying it at the moment. I'm 513th. Damo's 521st, but Damo absolutely blew up this week, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Damo's going to shoot up.
Yep.
The league table.
I hope you meant in height, because I've been waiting for that my whole life.
not the heroin when we wanted, but the heroin when we were shooting.
Fantastic. Jesse's also doing really well. He's within the top 1,000, which, I mean, that makes him at least in the top 10%. Or thereabouts. Shannon and Mikey, they're struggling a little bit. Shannon's 3,800.
Well, he said he wasn't going to check his team. Shannon did say on day one he's going to set his team and forget. So, yep. Respect.
And Mikey, actually, I think I might have these two around the wrong way. I can't remember, but I'm not sure if I trust my notes. But Shannon's 3,800 and Mikey's around the 10,000 mark, which when you're into the 10,000s in A-League fantasy, you're definitely amongst people that set their team first week and then just have forgotten about it or not done anything with it. So, yeah. But look, that wraps up the pod for this week. We really enjoyed getting together with the listeners, talking a little bit of Australian football, a little bit of Premier League as well. And we'll be back in around a month's time again to talk a little bit more again and revisit our power rankings and to talk FPL prizes as well once again. But until then, enjoy the football.
See ya.